Ethan Walker never imagined an ordinary Thursday afternoon would turn into one of the most confusing and emotional moments of his life. But everything changed the second he stepped into his grandmother's small house in Oregon to help her prepare for a community fundraise, only to find Claire Dawson, his grandma's closest friend, already fear-sorting boxes with that calm, warm smile she always carried, the one he tried not to think about too much. Even had always seen Claire as semi-different, someone who felt out of place in a world that rushed too quickly. Shaw had a quiet strength, gentle eyes, and a voice that always sounded like she was softening. Whatever chaos existed around her, he greeted her politely but warmly, and she returned the greeting with that soft laugh he had grown used to hearing over the years. The air felt normal, comforting even, until his grandmother stepped out to take a phone call, leaving him and Claire alone in the living room. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the curtains, turning to place golden, and as they sorted decorations, Claire joked about how she wasn't great with arts and crafts. Efan, bending down to pick up a dropped ribbon when suddenly he heard the sharp slide of fabric against carpet and looked up just in time to see her foot twist on the edge of a loose rug. Claire didn't scream. She only gasped, but the sound shot straight through him, and without thinking, he lunged forward, catching her by the arms before she could fall. Her breath trembled. Harkness buckled, and he guided her quickly against the wall, studying her body with both hands, feeling her shake in surprise. "It's okay. I've got you," Haas said, hoping his voice sounded steadier than he felt. Claire tried to put weight in her foot, but the moment she shifted, she winced with a deep, soft sound that made him hold her a little closer so she wouldn't fall again. She whispered, "Wait, I can't move." And the words were simple, but something in her tone made room change. Suddenly, everything felt closer, quieter, and strangely intimate, like the moment had pulled them out of the world and locked them into their own small space against fuel. Ethan wasn't prepared for how or where he became of the warmth of her arms beneath his hands, or how her breath brushed against his collar as she tried to steady herself. She looked embarrassed, cheeks flushed, eyes trying to avoid his, but she couldn't pull away, not without falling. So she stayed pressed gently against his hold, vulnerable in a way he had never seen her before. He kept reassuring her, telling her she was okay. And though she nodded, he could feel the tension in her, the mix of pain and the anxiety often caught in such an unexpected be-close moment. She whispered that she hadn't want to trouble him, that she didn't like being a burden. But he told her again and again that she wasn't, that he was glad he'd been there to catch her. He felt her slowly try to shift again, but her ankle shook too much, and she winced harder, gripping his shirt with one hand without meaning to, pulling him a breath closer. That pull, that tiny accidental tug made his own and heartbeat stumble because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't romantic in a louder, grand way, but it was real in a way that made him aware of her in a way he had never fully allowed himself to before. He tried to hide the rush-off emotion, focusing only on keeping herself. She apologized again, this time quieter, almost a whisper, and he told her gently, "It's all right, Claire. Lean at me until you're ready." She nodded, letting herself relax in his hold, earing her, still clutching his shirt lightly as if she didn't fully trust her legs. The sunlight shifted across her hair, and he had to force himself not to stare at her too long, worried she would catch the thoughtfulness in his eyes. There was no time to think too deeply about it, though, because she treated again to stand on her. "Ow!" But only for Hercule to shake once more, and she went so sharply that he instinctively lightened his grip, refusing to let her fall even an inch. Claire inhaled sharply as pain flashed across her face, and she whispered, "Not yet. I still can't." Her voice trembling just enough to break something small and quiet inside him, something he didn't fully understand yet. Trapped in that moment with her leaning on him, their breaths closed, the world seemed to slow, and Ethan became aware of every tiny detail. The warmth off her shoulder against his chest, the faint scent of vanilla and laundry detergent in her hair, the softness of her breath brushing his neck as shut to steady herself but trembling in her hand that still held on to him for support. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't helpless. She was simply human eye in a way he had never seen her, and that closeness of it wrapped tightly around his chest. He told her they should move slowly, that he could help her to the sofa if she wanted, and she nodded again, trusting him completely. He guided her carefully step by step, his hands still steady on her back, hers still gripping his arm. And that small connection felt thievier than he expected, like something didn't want to let go of too soon. Every step she took a tiny tremor, throw her. And every time Chef lynched, he paused and waited patiently, talking to her softly to keep her calm. She told him she hated moments like this, hated feeling weak. And Hookah's head, telling her she wasn't awake at all, that anyone could twist an ankle. She laughed lightly at that, though, with a shaky laugh, and thanked at him again, her voice warm, but strained when they finally reached the sofa and helped her sit. She inhaled slowly, the relief in her expression clear. But just as he was about to ask if she needed water or ice, the front door and his grandmother walked back inside, full of cheerful energy, completely unaware of what had just happened. Claire quickly let go of Ethan's arm, smoothing her hair and straightening her blouse, trying to hit Debbie's flustered look on her face. While Ethan stepped back, his heartbeat still running faster than it should have. His grandmother rushed over, concerned but calm, and Ethan explained what happened, trying to keep it simple, trying not to reveal how unexpectedly emotional Thymet had felt. Claire kept insisting she was fine, but she winced again when she tried to adjust her foot, and Ethan saw it immediately. His grandmother insisted on wrapping Claire's ankle, bringing out a small first aid kit and giving advice the whole time. Claire sat quietly, grateful but slightly embarrassed, avoiding Ethan's eyes with a shy, unsure expression he wasn't used to seeing on her. When his grandmother stood out again to get ice from the niece freezer, the room fell silent. Ethan glanced at Claire, and she finally looked back at him, her eyes soft and full of something unspoken, a mix of gratitude and emotional weight. "Thank you for catching me," she whispered, her voice calmer now, but deeper and more meaningful. Ethan nodded, not trusting him to say more, because something about the moment still sat warm and heavy in his chest. She held his gaze for a second longer, and there was a hint of something there. Something hadn't fully understood yet, but felt all the same, as if the moment they shared against the wall had quite something between them. And though neither of them knew what to doubt with that feeling, both of them knew it wasn't going to disappear. Claire Dawson had always been part of Ethan's memories, tucked quietly at the edge of family gatherings, community events, and holiday dinners, where she helped his grandmother with everything from marrying chairs to baking enough peace for a small army. And though Ethan had never admitted it to himself out loud, there was something about her that always made him pause just a second longer than he should have. Something warm and steady in the way she moveth throughout the world, as if she'd learned it along. How to carry both joy and sadness without letting either break her. She wasn't much older than him, mid-40s, maybe 45 at most, but she carried herself with a kind, oft-thoughtful grace that didn't feel like only experience. When he was younger, he'd seen her as simply one of his grandmother's closest friends, someone kind enough to remember his birthday and ask about his job, someone who gave gentle advice without sounding like she was lecturing. But now, standing in the living room after helping her sit down and seeing her wrapped carefully with a loose bandage, he realized he had been pretending not to notice her for years. And the strangest part was that she had always treated him the same way Shaw treated everyone else, with warmth and sincerity. But today felt different. Today felt like she had let him see a part of her she usually kept hidden. She sat on the sofa, breathing slowly throughout the fading ache in her ankle, trying not to look embarrassed, though could tell from the soft red color in her cheeks that she was still replying the moment he'd caught her. She brushed a straight piece of hair behind her ear and forced a small smile. And Ethan couldn't help noticing the way her eyes softened Edwin as she looked at him as if she was grateful in a way she didn't know how to express. His grandmother, busy in the kitchen again, called out instructions about elevating the foot and drinking. Water and Claire tried to at the fussing, saying it wasn't as serious as it looked. But Ethan could see the tension in her face that left over fear from the fall. She apologized again for causing trouble and shook his head, telling her she never caused trouble, that she had been helping long before he showed up. That made her smile. Really smile. One-off toast gentle expressions that made the feel warmer. When his grandmother left again to find a better wrap for Thinkle, the quiet between them grew longer and more meaningful. Claire looked down at her hands, twisting her finger slightly as if she was trying to gather her words. She finally said, "I didn't mean to scare you earlier. I wasn't expecting that to happen." A fan told her he wasn't scared at all, only worried she was hurt. She looked at him for a long moment after that, her eyes shielding something like appreciation mixed with something he couldn't name. There was a softness in her expression that made him want to step closer. Beth didn't afraid of crossing a line hadn't fully understand yet. Instead, Hesed on the chair across from her, leaning forward, just enough to show he was present. Listening, she thanked him again. This time slower, deeper, like she wanted him to know the words weren't casual. She admitted that things like this frustrated her, not because of that pain, but because she hated depending on people. She said she'd learned to take care of herself after years of handling too many things alone. And the way she said it carried a quiet ache that made Deethan see her in a new way as someone who held more strength in her heart than most people realized. He told her it was okay to lean on someone occasionally, but even the strongest people need that sometimes. And she smiled again, this time with a hint of sadness. Shuttled him, she admired how close he was to his grandmother, how he always helped without being asked. He shrugged it off, saying it was nothing, but she insisted it wasn't nothing. That kindness-like kiss mattered more than people admitted. The room fell into a softer quiet after that. The kind that felt comfortable, like two people sitting inside a shared pause. Ethan noticed the little things. How Claire kept adjusting the blanket on her lap even though it was perfectly fine. How her breathing had steadied but her cheeks still held that shy pink color. How she kept glancing at him and then looking away quickly as if she wasn't sure what she was allowed to feel. He wondered if she felt the same strange pull he felt. This unexpected R-ness that had started the moment he had got her and seemed to grow every time their eyes met. He didn't know what to do with the feeling. He didn't want— Thomas read the situation. Didn't want to make things awkward for his grandmother, for Claire, but he couldn't ignore the way his chest felt warm every time she spoke softly, or the way his thoughts kept drifting to her, even when he treated focus on something else. Claire finally broke the silence, telling him she had always thought he would move far away one day, maybe to a big city like Seattle or Chicago, and she sounded surprised he still lived nearby. Ethan Law gently saying life didn't pull him as far as he once thought it would. She nodded like she understood that more deeply than she let on. She admitted that the town felt like home to her because of people like his grandmother, people who made life feel steady. She hesitated before adding, "And people like you." Her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan felt something shift inside him at those words. Something Zebel but undeniable. He wanted to ask what she meant, but she looked down quickly, almost shy, and he didn't want to push her. Instead, he reached out to adjust the pillow under her in dreadfoot. And when his hand brushed hers, she froze for half a second, not in fear, but in something like surprise. And then she relaxed, offering a small, grateful smile that made his heartbeat stumble all over again. His grandmother returned a moment later with a better wrap and a lecture about resting for the rest of the day. And Claire listened politely, nodding while Ethan sat beside them, trying to study the thoughts rushing through his shed. Claire insisted. She didn't want Tobin inconvenience, but his grandmother told her she was family, and that word family hit.